I chose to do my research on a research study on celiac disease because my brother-in-law has it, and it's really fascinating to me because I have two brother-in-laws. One has celiac, one has lactose intolerance. So it's very interesting to see disease versus intolerance and a difference in how one can just take a pill, the other can't. So I'm always curious to learn more about it. So I did, my two studies were, the first one was on, is blood transfusion linked to celiac disease, a nationwide cohort study. So I thought they had a really good idea, and they just looked up people that had, it was in Sweden, and anyone who had a blood transfusion between 1968 and 2012. And so of that group, there ended up being 1,058,289 in Sweden. And so, let me find it. So then it was, of those, 9,455 patients received at least one blood transfusion from an individual with a previous or subsequent diagnosis of celiac. And then after that, it was patients who received a transfusion from a donor with celiac were similar to those who did not. So, I mean, although I was kind of really interested to see, sorry, my dad's watching a movie. I was kind of interested to see if there was any relation between blood, like, I don't know, like sexually transmitted diseases and other, like, I think polio and things like that. So I was kind of nervous if we were going to have to start signing off on, have you left the country, do you have celiac on your, before you donate blood. But no, in the end it says overall patients exposed to blood with a donor with celiac did not have a higher risk of celiac disease. So they had a 95% confidence interval, and well, it was just kind of, the results were not even close. It basically just seems like it was just those people would have already had it for the small amount of people that did contract celiac disease after the fact. And then I started reading this study, but then I realized it wasn't actually a study, it was just kind of a research article. But it was interesting. It had a lot of interesting things in the fact that it was talking about intestinal microbiota, if I'm saying that right, and if that's a cause, consequence, or coevolution. So they're all saying dysbiotic microbiota seems to be associated with persistent gastrointestinal systems and treated with celiac disease patients. And that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, the microorganisms in your body and the bacteria are, not normal. So they were just kind of wondering, is that what starts it, or is that because of the disease? Is that what gives you the disease, or is it a reflection of it in the body? And it seems as if, just again, another science thing that just said, I don't know. I love science, but it's also very frustrating. So then it was just kind of, it said it could influence the development of oral intolerance of gluten if, together with environmental factors. So I thought that was really interesting, in the fact that it said mothers who breastfeed could give their infant celiac disease. So apart from, it was interesting that they said that breastfeed. So it was like a part of you is going to the infant. I don't know if they took into effect the fact that it's a genetic disorder. Maybe it was kind of a causation versus correlation issue. But it did say together with environmental factors like breastfeeding or antibiotics. So I think that was very interesting because, yeah, it just said many complex immune-mediated diseases have been linked to changes in the composition of the gut microbiota and its genome, including celiac disease. It has also recently been observed that the microbiota differs among different subgroups of celiac disease patients, stratified according to specific clinical manifestations. So each person with celiac could have a different gut bacteria level and issues, which does make sense because, like, I know multiple people with celiac, and like where my brother-in-law, he can't have it, or else he has gut issues, rashes, things like that. But some just have one or just have the other, and so it's interesting how far they differ for being the same disease. Then it says, moreover, although the vast majority of patients diagnosed with celiac disease respond to a gluten-free diet, there is a subgroup of celiac patients that do not show clinical improvement after adherence to the gluten-free diet. In particular, patients suffering persistent symptoms on a long-term gluten-free diet also show altered microbiota composition. So I feel really bad because I don't know what you would do if you had celiac and a gluten-free diet didn't help. So I hope we can figure that out soon. The other actual study that I found was called Prevalence of Celiac Disease in At-Risk and Not At-Risk Groups in the United States. Because they were talking about how it's very prevalent in Europe, but they were wondering if it's just as bad in the US. And again, it's kind of one of those things that, oh, shocker, we already knew that. So it just said that they tested first degree and second degree relatives. And so a total of 13,145 subjects were screened, and 4,508 first degree and 1,275 second degree relatives of patients with biopsy-proven celiac disease, 3,236 symptomatic patients, and 4,126 not-at-risk individuals. So overall, it was just kind of saying, in the conclusion, it was suggesting that celiac disease occurs frequently not only in patients with gastrointestinal symptoms, but also in the first and second degree relatives with numerous common disorders, even in the absence of gastrointestinal symptoms. Like I was saying before, how it varies, the different symptoms. And it appears to be more common but neglected disorder in the generally been recognized in the United States. It was interesting in one of my studies, I don't know where it was, but it said it's actually now the most common disease in the United States. It was like 1% of the European population now has, of the European ancestry. So that's insane. But all right, that's my celiac disease study of a studies.